Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Wendy, I want to ask you a question. If you're in a political campaign and your policies don't work, you cannot brag about the economy because it's in the tank. You can't brag about employment because it's in the tank. You can't brag about the cost of living because it's gone sky high. You can't brag about your health care achievements. Right. So how do you win? What do you do?
Well, you're talking about, but Obama's not running.
No, but Hillary is. And so,
talking about Obama.
What's the next avenue? What would the Democrats do?
You attack the character of your opponent.
That's exactly it. You make him look. And so the president of the United States of America, supposedly the president of all of us, comes out to attack the nominee of the Republican Party, who has won more votes than anybody along the way, about 3 million more than historical. And he says he is unfit for office. Why are they doing that? Well, because they don't have any program. They're going to raise taxes, and there's a huge number of people on welfare and on food stamps and so forth. He can't brag about any of that, and certainly not about the Iranian deal. Isn't that amazing?
Well, this new development with Iran is very interesting, and I don't think that looks good for Hillary.
Well, it's
she
one
was
more.
Secretary of State when this went down.
You wonder how many of those things, if the Donald will just stay on message and just talk about jobs and the economy, he's got it in a walk. But if he keeps on talking on these side issues, but anyhow, they're trying to bait him to attacking. Well, there's a new report out, as Wendy mentioned, that the Obama administration sent $400 million to Iran in January when it released 4 American hostages. That is $100 million per hostage.
Wow. Well, the White House says it was not a ransom payment. That's the latest controversy. It comes after another war of words between Trump and President Obama. Ephraim Graham has the story.
I think the Republican nominee is unfit to serve as president. He's woefully unprepared to do this job.
With a foreign leader by his side, President Obama made an unprecedented move in modern elections. He not only blasted Donald Trump as unqualified for the White House, he suggested Republican leaders should withdraw their support for their party's nominee.
If you are repeatedly having to say in very strong terms that what he has said is unacceptable, why are you still endorsing him?
Trump wasted no time firing back.
Well, he's a terrible president. He'll probably go down as the worst president in the history of our country. He's been a total disaster. You look at what's happened to the Middle East, you look at what's happened with Syria and his line in the sand.
Trump's criticism comes just as the Wall Street Journal reports the White House secretly organized the transfer of $400 million to Iran. That coincided with the January release of 4 Americans detained in Tehran. The money is said to be the first installment of a $1.7 billion settlement the Obama administration reached with Iran over a failed arms deal from the late 1970s, and that the first payment also coincided with the implementation of the nuclear agreement. Some Republicans in Congress accused the president of paying a ransom for U.S. hostages, but the Obama administration insists there was no quid pro quo. And some lawmakers worry Iran would give some of the money to allies like President Assad of Syria and Hezbollah, which the U.S. considers a terrorist group. The news of the cash exchange came after Trump had already said the president and his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton have destabilized the Middle East, and it could become an issue in the election. Along with Trump's charges, the Obama administration has released criminal aliens into the U.S. who have killed one innocent American after another and produced the worst economic recovery since the Great Depression. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, the new report about the cash payment to Iran comes just after a year after President Obama's nuclear deal with that country, a deal that many people still criticize. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. The United States, along with 5 other world powers, signed that deal with a stated goal of preventing Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. But as Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, Critics still warn it could actually have the opposite effect and allow Iran to build nuclear weapons.
U.S. President Barack Obama hailed the deal as a diplomatic breakthrough when it was signed.
After 2 years of negotiations, the United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not. A comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Despite the praise by President Obama and others, 1 year later, some experts still warn that the flaws within the agreement could mean that instead of preventing the Persian nation from building a nuclear weapon, it could lead to a nuclear Iran, with potentially catastrophic results for Israel, the Middle East, and even the United States itself.
Their major goal in this negotiation was to get maximum sanctions relief in exchange for absolute minimal nuclear concessions. And that's basically what they got with this deal.
Emily Landau, an Israeli nuclear expert, believes Iran won the negotiations. It can walk away from the deal at any time. And the agreement failed to address Iran's ballistic missile program.
And their biggest victory is not having their breakout capability destroyed, undermined, dismantled. Not only that, they gained legitimacy for their uranium enrichment.
Throughout the negotiations, the Obama administration presented a narrative that said if you don't support the deal, you're for war. They also presented Iranian President Rouhani as a moderate. Former CIA official Claire Lopez believes the administration wasn't honest with the American public.
We're looking at a real coordinated effort to deceive the American people about this deal while not even touching on the covert program, which of course is where the weapons development is really going on, literally underground in bunkers and tunnels under mountains.
Lopez cites the now infamous New York Times Magazine article. In it, national security official Ben Rhodes said they used the media as an echo chamber to help push its argument to the public in the U.S.
Trying to sell all of that package of goods through duplicity and deceit, but using a very agreeable, a very complicit media in the United States is what that echo chamber was all about.
While the deal puts restraints on Iran for 10 or 15 years, Landau says they don't mind.
Looking at the long term, which is what Iran does, they've kept their breakout capability. Even if they have to wait out 10 to 15 years till the sunset clause comes into effect and all these restrictions that we're talking about, whether they uphold them, whether they violate, everything will be lifted. And then they will be much better positioned in any case to move towards a nuclear weapons capability.
While ISIS has seized the headlines in the West, Landau and Lopez believe Iran remains the far greater danger.
A country that can develop intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities that could, maybe within 10 years even, reach the United States, obviously we're talking about a different order of magnitude.
No comparison at all. The threat from the Iranian regime is existential, particularly as regards their nuclear weapons capability and the EMP component of that.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, doesn't that chill you to think Ben Rhodes acknowledged in the New York Times, acknowledged that they were trying to deceive the American public and use a compliant press to sell their message? Why? Why does the president want to cozy up to our enemies and stiff our allies? That's what happened. He turned his back on Israel. He turned his back on Saudi Arabia. He's turned his back on Jordan. He's turned his back on Egypt, those who would be our friends, and embraces Cuba and embraces Iran. What is it? Is there something there we don't see? But it certainly is on the surface. It is very disturbing. And you talk about this election coming up. This is major, major problem. And they mentioned also the EMT, if you heard our guest yesterday, warning about the danger of an electronic magnetic pulse that could be triggered by just a small, low-yield nuclear device exploded in the air over the midsection of America. Well, somebody did something like that yesterday. Or today, North Korea. And so let's go to a report from John about what they're doing.
That's right, Pat. North Korea launched 2 ballistic missiles today, one of which flew roughly 620 miles, one of the longest flights by a Korean missile, according to U.S. Strategic Command. Initial indications show one of the missiles exploded immediately after launch, while the second was tracked over North Korea and into the Sea of Japan. Officials in Pyongyang also claim they've seen a series of technical breakthroughs that would enable the country to develop a long-range nuclear missile capable of reaching the continental United States. South Korean defense officials say the North doesn't yet have such a weapon, but some civilian experts believe North Korea does have the technology to mount warheads on shorter-range missiles that can strike neighbors South Korea and Japan. Well, in health news, if you want to keep your memory in better shape as you get older, try exercise. Researchers at UCLA have discovered physical activity can affect the size of the hippocampus, the part of the brain that controls short-term memory. They believe regular physical activity for older adults can literally lead to larger brains and a reduced risk of developing dementia. And they found the beneficial effects of physical activity against dementia was stronger in people aged 75 and older. The bottom line, Pat, it's never too old to exercise to keep your brain healthy.
Well, I like to ride horses, and they exercise. I hope their brains or the hippocampus of my horse is getting bigger, so he's smarter.
No, it's supposed to help your hippocampus, not your
not
horse.
The horse. I'll give him all the benefits. Well, you must have a huge hippocampus. You're exercising all the time.
I love to work out.
Yeah.
I get the blues if I don't work out. I got to be active. You know, in fact, like even at work, I never take the elevator. I don't understand people who take elevators.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, unless I have a suitcase or I'm like, even if I have like a lot of stuff, I will still take the stairs just to prove that I can take the stairs.
I feel guilty if I don't work out. If I do work it, I feel so good. I mean, it's just I don't do a whole lot, but I do enough to keep going.